At Shanghai Pudong Airport, 70,719 relevant personnel were tested. One case of a new coronavirus was confirmed.
The epidemic in Shanghai continues to spread. Many areas are locked down. The official media is completely silent. People were seen fleeing the Pudong Airport. A railway terminal, a local residential community, a middle school, and a hospital have since been locked down for testing.
Who dares to inject a CCP vaccine? How much is the vaccine price in Sichuan? Liang Zong'an from Sichuan University said, vaccine is a public health product. Its prices won't be based on the supply and the demand, but on the actual production cost. It will be available to everyone.
Communist China has stopped issuing passports and prepares to close the country.
Internet certificate is required for internet access. The CCP has a new strategy for network control.
Chinese patent drugs are suddenly boycotted. Hospitals have stopped using them on a large scale.
In Hubei, an elderly woman came to pay cash on a rainy day but was rejected by medical insurance bureau staff and was told to use Alipay. The old lady doesn't know what to do, like a helpless kid.
In Tianjin, a traffic policeman forcibly got into a taxi and identified himself as law enforcement. This was no different from robbery in broad daylight. How can you get into my taxi directly? You can ask me to show my ID, you can salute, you can stop me, but you can't get into my car. Who gave you the right to get into my car like that? Is this how you enforce the law?
The people hold a banner to defend their rights. Government official told the people to trust the government, the party, and the presidency.
Remember the Guizhou college students who starved to death just a few years ago? Today, Guizhou announced that the last 9 deeply poverty-stricken counties have been lifted out of poverty. The national goal of poverty alleviation has been accomplished.
The State Council Information Office held a press conference on poverty alleviation and protection. We have achieved a decisive victory in the fight against poverty. The superiority of our socialist system has been fully demonstrated in the process of poverty alleviation.
A major collision involving 40-plus vehicles occurred on a Baomao highway in Shanxi. One of the vehicles carried 34 tons of methanol. More than 10 vehicles caught fire, with many people trapped in the fire.
Communist China held a World Internet Conference. The Internet Development Forum is important. I extend warm welcomes to the opening of this forum. Zhou Nanshan gave a speech on video.
Communist China built a wall at the Vietnam border to prevent the Chinese people from escaping. I'm standing at the foot of the levee to let you have a sense of its height.
Foreign Minister used verbal attacks to respond to U.S. withdrawal from the Open Skies Treaty. China expresses a deep regret to U.S. withdrawal while disregarding protest from the international world. This move by the U.S. will undermine the trust and the transparency between countries over military issues. This is not conducive to maintaining regional security and stability. This will also have a negative impact on international arms control and disarmament. The U.S. should take serious concerns by international community and resolve the problem through communication.
The CCP held a drill with real missiles in the South China Sea to intimidate the world. Recently, a fleet of the Navy's missile boats held a live drill in the South China Sea, detecting a radar signal 60 degrees starboard. fleet under the attack by guided missiles. The missile boats launched several jammers as countermeasure.
Mayor of Maryland said the number of people who died of coronavirus exceeded the number in the Korea, Vietnam, and Gulf War. He asked people to wear masks. WHO expert will go to China to investigate the origin of the virus. Global Times said China invited them. UK published a half-year report on Hong Kong. The CCP Foreign Minister office in Hong Kong said Britain shouldn't have the colonial dreams.
Communist China's embassy to Canada said Pompeo's remarks on China are Pompeo-style lies. British Foreign Minister said they would stop British judges from serving as non-tenured Supreme Justices in Hong Kong. The UK published a half-year report about Hong Kong. In her Facebook post, Carrie Lam slammed the report as a double standard.
U.S. President Donald Trump is getting ready to amp up pressure on China with a new trade blacklist. A draft seen exclusively by Reuters lists 89 Chinese companies the Commerce Department says have ties to the military. It includes Commercial Aircraft Corp of China, or COMAC, a rising star with its sights set on Boeing and Airbus. Not all companies in the list are Chinese. Some are Russian, but the U.S. considers all of them, quote, military end users. Being on the list means they can't buy some U.S. products, from aircraft engines to word processing software. The Commerce Department called the restrictions, quote, vital for protecting U.S. national security interests.
It wasn't our company in the Terraces report, but we do have components in our products that come from China. I don't know the exact percentage. I can certainly get that to the committee through my staff. Happy to work with you on getting the exact number. Our products, our tabulated products, have always been manufactured in the United States. And so if you look
before
at,
you go forward, what are the components that you
that
get from China?
So, for example, LCD components, the actual glass screen on the interface, down to the chip component level of capacitors and resistors. Several of those components, to our knowledge, are not even, there's no option for manufacturing of those in the United States. We would welcome guidelines and best practices from the committee and from the federal government in terms of this is not a problem that's unique to the election industry.
U.S. steel production booming because of steel tariffs put in place by President Trump. That's according to a recent op-ed that says, even as some pundits and economists say America's steel industry is in decline, for those who understand the steel industry, it's clear that the administration's steel tariffs have generated a boom in steel investment and a shift to newer technologies that are creating higher paying jobs for thousands of new steel workers. The author of that piece, chief economist at the Coalition for a Prosperous America, Jeff Ferry, joins me now. Jeff, I took a look at some of the data from the industry, and even the raw steel production, which bottomed in 2016, has been on a steady incline. How did this happen?
Well, I think the steel tariffs played a crucial role in the revival of the U.S. steel industry. I don't think you can avoid that fact. That's the central fact, is that in 2018, the Trump administration put 25% tariffs on imported steel, and the industry's been on a tear ever since.
American people that are listening to your show need to understand Congress is the legislative branch of government. All we can do is do criminal referrals, of which I've done 14 criminal referrals involving dozens and dozens of people. But we don't carry guns and we don't have handcuffs. And that's really what we're looking at right now. So we're in a fight for the heart and stability of this country right now, which is why, going back to what we were just talking about, it's why it's so important and critical to make sure that the election results here are right. And if they're not, we're getting to a place of no return where you're going to have the legislative branch of government where people are not even going to be able to talk to each other any longer because the left is becoming so radicalized.
What happened in Detroit can only be described as the worst fraud I've ever seen, carried out deliberately by the hack Democrat crooked party of Detroit. The overvotes are 140, 150, 200%, 300, 400%. How can you have 400% overvotes without having fraud? And the Attorney General doesn't care about that because he doesn't care about Democrats stealing elections. Misconduct of the election by state officials in at least 5 or 6 different states, in which the misconduct of the election involved deprivation of constitutional rights for the president. You've got to say that Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania and Philadelphia and Detroit have a great expertise in voter fraud. It isn't the first election they've stolen, but this time they had massive ballots to do it with. And we have evidence. The evidence has been presented. And the media lies that we have no evidence. They're just too lazy to read our 100 affidavits, which are on the public record, from American citizens whose votes were stolen from them.
I think we should not in any way besmirch the national left-wing media by calling them lazy. I think you and I both know that they are politically corrupt and aligned through their corporate ownership with the establishment that means to carry out its will. The question I've got is, now we've been watching you pursue both electoral fraud through the mail-in ballots, electoral fraud as well through the software and the claims about Dominion, a break with Sidney Powell over the weekend. What's behind that, and what is the motive, the reason for the split between Powell and Giuliani et al.?
Well, I think it's because we're pursuing 2 different theories. Our theory of the case to get to the Supreme Court, now in 4 places, and it's soon going to be in 2 others, and there'll be an overall lawsuit, is basically misconduct of the election by state officials in at least 5 or 6 different states, in which the misconduct of the election involved deprivation of constitutional rights for the president.
You see scrolling who are in the ground and also in a voting booth.
Yes, so it started like this. The very first data set was actually we're starting doing queries, and we found people that had been registered for Republican, but their party one status, basically the last status change, was a D, and we found about 40,000 people that were changed from Republican to Democrat. I then started cold calling people from that list, and the reaction was quite strong, quite violent. People told me to fix it or to change it. People thought I was calling from the government. I explained to them that I was just checking and just doing this research. So that was my first attempt to contact people. Then I contacted people from the GOP themselves because the media was not responding at all. And I contacted people from the GOP. I found to contact some really nice people from the GOP that were very interested into looking into this, and helped us a little bit, and we helped them back with data, basically. So this list that you see here is, I think, from the 45th district, and there's also the Washington one. What's interested is that there are also pictures of the grave, and there's death notices, and we also have the records, like you can check on the ballot tracking if they have a vote and when it was recorded.
So Vincent, this stuff is kind of explosive, because if it's happening in District 45 in Pennsylvania, if it's happening in Washington County in Pennsylvania, these are not exactly hot spots of voter aggression around the country. I think the fear for many people is if you can come up with a couple hundred dead people in these counties,
but how is this actually? How did this actually flow into what happened in those districts? Greg? What's the status of those districts today? Hang on. What were they on election night? What are they today? And what did this data have to do with the difference?
So the 45th district, and specifically is the state Senate district, and it's a virtual tie right now. And one of the reasons why it's a tie is we had that ruling in Western Pennsylvania, how people that didn't date their absentee ballots or mail-in ballots correctly got tossed, and that was about 2,300 ballots. So that's the status on the legal front of this state Senate district that is in a virtual tie right now.
By the way, if that was taken throughout the whole state, particularly in Philadelphia, and we had the ability to not have the separation, the mingling of the ballots, Donald J. Trump would be the winner in Pennsylvania. That's what that's the level of detail we're talking about. This is the problem we have in Pennsylvania.
And
is that correct?
Extrapolate that out to there's a total of 67 counties, so there's 66 more where this can be facilitated.
This is the finesse. Okay, I want to go back now. How did the finding of this affect the 45th district?
Well, from my understanding, and I want you to explain it to us, Vincent. You said you gave all this.
I tell you what. Why don't we let Vincent cogitate on this? We're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to come back. We've got segments, and we got other people to come up, but I want to get to the bottom of this. This is explosive, and this shows you about people going to the numbers and going in and getting into the data and comparing and contrasting, and it can be extrapolated out. So that's why I want to take our time and make sure we get.
And there's another interesting set of data that he has where he compares people with the same first, middle, and last name and the same birth date and the voter rolls in Pennsylvania and Michigan, and there are tens of thousands of similarities.
Let's take a short commercial break. This is War Room Pandemic. We've got Vincent on from Zurich, Switzerland, one of the data scientists that are going through the details of the voter rolls. This one in Pennsylvania.
I can tell you, including Xi Jinping and Hu Jintao, no one knows how much money there really is in China. So whenever a new general secretary assumes the office, the first thing he does is start a census. How many of us are there? Then he will count how much money there is. This was done by various financial departments, but they were never able to reach a conclusion, so over time they stopped doing that. It's like whenever they audit their food stockpile just before they go and check, the storage catches fire every single time. Now all of these big bosses in the world have learned from the CCP. We must keep the China story up, keep exploiting the 1.4 billion slaves, and use them to build up our next financial system. And this new financial system is virtual currency. These people were like, wow, we really can rule this world through this. Power in this world consists of two things: might and money. A nation's power are basically two things: the gun and the wallet. Everything else is below them. Those are called soft powers. But gun and wallet are hard powers, right? The CCP can give them money and keep their money safe and give them guns. That's why the dark forces support the CCP. You think they care about Chinese people being enslaved, care about our democracy and rule of law? My God. Do you know what they think? Really, it's just like a person is locked up in a prison and he asks for human rights. They think we're being funny. You want human rights and democracy? I'll give you all of that. And then they shock us with a stun baton. The 1.4 billion enslaved Chinese people, our productivity and market, and the CCP's dictatorship, which can be controlled. That's what they want.
Italy's COVID-19 death toll passes 50,000. Results show AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine can be 90% effective. American Academy of Pediatrics says there was a 28% increase in child COVID-19 cases over the last 2 weeks. 5 new COVID-19 cases in Singapore, 13 consecutive days with no local infections. England to allow 4,000 fans at the sporting events in lowest risk areas. Border between two biggest Australian states reopens. Tensions mount in Thai protest as Bangkok braces for major rally. Asian shares climbed on Monday with a broad regional index touching a record high on hopes for imminent coronavirus vaccine.
mama? Are you okay over there? Your son is crying and missing you, and sees you in his dreams. You sent take down the CCP, cause it's God's will, it's God's will. So I'll wait for you, and I'll see you when we end the CCP, yeah. So